I started the recording now.
Can you hear me now?
And I'm going to share the recording afterwards with you.
Hello.
Hi.
Hello.
Ahum, can you hear me now?
Yes, we do, Ishai. Great to hear you.
Okay.
Great to see you as well.
How are you
I
this morning?
want to try.
Hello, how are you?
ישי, אתה שומע אותי?
Guten Morgen, Herr Schau, Sie sind auf der Arbeit und sind mit dabei. Viel Glück,
Hi.
Kerstin.
Good morning.
I'm going to try and share my screen. And I want you to tell me that you see everything.
Weiß jetzt nicht, was hier läuft. Ich habe
Ja.
Computer
Can
nicht
you
freigegeben.
see my screen?
Yes, we do see your screen.
51 Teilnehmer, nicht gut.
ישי, אתה שומע
Ahum,
אותי?
can you see my screen?
ישי, אתה שומע אותי?
Okay.
Naja,
Okay.
יונה, אתה מצליח להקליט?
הוא עושה את
Yes, I
ההקלטה.
can hear you very well.
הנה, ישי, אתה שומע אותי?
נחום,
מה? יונה.
שומע, שומע.
סשה הוא ההוסט, נכון?
סטאצי ביקש להיות ההוסט, כי הוא רוצה עם החבר'ה שלו להיות בתקשורת.
אוקיי, אז הוא גם עשה את הרקורד.
אוקיי,
I do. Well, it is recorded.
אוקיי. ישי, אתה שומע? אתה זמין?
נחום, אתה שומע אותי?
מי זה, ישי? אני שומע אותך חלש מאוד.
אני שומע, שומע.
ישי, אתה יכול
כן.
לדבר? זה אתה מדבר עכשיו, ישי?
אם יותר טוב עכשיו?
אוקיי, עכשיו בסדר. אבל אתה,
אוקיי.
אני רואה רק תמונה סטטית שלך, לא
כן, אני מנסה. רגע. עכשיו רואים אותי, נכון?
כן, עכשיו רואים אותך, וגם שומעים אותך, ואנחנו מתחילים.
אוקיי.
אוקיי. אני מתחיל, ואני מעביר אליך את רשות הדיבור. Okay, good morning to all our Rotarians, friends from Germany and Israel, past district governors, past presidents. Good morning to District Governor Edgar Friedrich of District 1940, elected Governor Chaim Kennett, designated Governor Dani Gilboa, designated Bashir Nusser, Chairman of ICC Israel Germany, Director Gidi Piper, presidents of the Berlin Club, Worms Club, and Brandenburg Club. I also congratulate those who I cannot see at the moment. Welcome to the virtual tour of Jerusalem organized by District 2940. I'm sure you will enjoy it. We have an excellent guide, and I pass the microphone to our guide, Ishai Levi. Please, Ishai.
Okay, good morning, everyone. I'm very, very excited. As you probably know, today is Passover. So we're going to celebrate Passover today. And I want to welcome you all to this virtual tour. What we're going to do in the next 1 hour is that we're going to try and understand what makes Jerusalem so special. As we know, Jerusalem is a holy city. It's holy for, 1 second, I'm closing the door here, too much noise. It's holy for 2 billion Christians and 1.5 billion Muslims and about 20 million Jews. So what makes Jerusalem so holy, so special? This is the oldest city in the world where people are still living in. It's a city that has more than 5,000 years of history, and it was built This stone in Jerusalem has a history, but when you dig underneath every stone, you find more history. So I decided to start with this nice quote from Isaiah. The law will go out from Zion and the word of the Lord from Jerusalem. Let's open the day and see what we can discover in the next hour. So, Jerusalem, the holy city. I chose these two pictures because I think they represent the beauty and the complexity of Jerusalem. Look over here on the right-hand side. You see the Western Wall. This is the holiest place for the Jews all around the world. All the people in the world, Jewish people, when they pray towards this direction, the direction of the Western Wall, because this is the remains of the first or the second temple that was built by King Herod. But just above it, you see the Dome of the Rock. And the Dome of the Rock is the third most holy place for Muslims around the world. And we're going to discover it. And above it is Mount of Olives. And in the Mount of Olives, we see two, the Russian church and the Lutheran church, the German Church of Ascension. So in one picture, you see why is Jerusalem holy for Jews, Christians, and Muslims. So it's very beautiful, but it's also very complicated. Look over here on the left-hand side. You see the person that is selling the bagels. But right by him, you see two Russian nuns, Orthodox nuns, a Muslim family, and a Jewish rabbi. They are going out from Jaffa Gate, the main gate of the old city of Jerusalem. So again, Christians, Jews, and Muslims live in the city together. Now, let me tell you a little bit about myself. I'm a licensed tour guide since 1995, both in Israel and abroad. And I'm the husband of Tali and the father of Gaia and Itai. And we like to travel a lot. So I have a history, philosophy, and computer science degrees, and also an MBA. But my main job was always to be a tour guide. I speak Hebrew, English, Spanish, and Portuguese. And in 2019, we had 4.5 million tourists in Israel. It was very good, but then COVID came. So I became a teacher in school. And then I started to do these virtual tours, which I enjoyed very much. And as you probably know, these tours are free. But in these hard times, I'm not ashamed to say that if you like to leave at the end of the donation, I put now in the chat 2 links, and I'll remind you that at the end, but I want us to enjoy. So I fell in love with Jerusalem because of my grandparents, Lala and Miriam. Lala was born in Kiev, was raised in Vienna, and came to Israel in 1934. 1934. And Miriam, they lived right in front of the Mount Zion. And what you see here is the view that we used to see from their house. This is the German church. It's called the Church of the Dormition Abbey. It's a Catholic church that was built by William II, the Emperor of Germany, and he built it in 1898. And you see the bell tower. So this is a Catholic church. And now you see the walls of the old city and the Tower of David. And this is the citadel of the city, the fortress that was built, destroyed, and rebuilt many, many times. Now, I always knew this is called the Tower of David. But later on, when I became a guide, I discovered it's actually a mosque, a tower, a minaret of a mosque, a Muslim mosque. What's it doing over here? This is one thing that we always wanted to understand. So all this made me fall in love with Jerusalem and want to explore more. My grandfather used to take me to the Wailing Wall. This was built by Herod 2,000 years ago as part of the temple, the most beautiful building in the world that was ruined, burned by the Romans. And the wall is the holiest place for the Jews. It's an active synagogue that is open 24 hours a day. So usually you come and you see some people praying 3 times a day. There's a public prayer, but 2 times a year we have what we call the priest's blessing, the Birkat Kohanim, the priest's blessing. And we do it in Passover and in Sukkot. So you see maybe 100,000 people, maybe more, coming to pray. You see the men's section in the left and the women's section in the right. Okay? And the blessing goes like this. The Lord bless you and keep you. The Lord makes his face to shine upon you and be gracious to you. The Lord lift up your consciousness upon you and give you peace. These are the gates of Jerusalem. Jerusalem has 8 gates. 7 are open and 1 is blocked. The one that is blocked is called the Golden Gate, or the Gate of Mercy. We will talk about it because this is the place that Jesus came through, and this is where Jews, Christians, and Muslims are waiting for the Messiah to come through. Okay? This gate on the left, you can see in the left bottom, has holes in it. These holes are from the Independence War from 1948. So it's a Turkish wall built 450 years ago. And you can see that on the right bottom side, this is the gate of Damascus, again, one of the main gates of the old city. So in order to understand, we have to go through the history of Jerusalem. It's very complicated. Usually it will take a few hours just to go through that, but we will do it very quickly. I just want to show you, this is a page from a book. You can read it. It's a German book again. And this is the map of the world as they thought about in 1581. And they say, okay, America is the new world, but the main world is Europe, Asia, and Africa. And Israel, and especially Jerusalem, is right in the middle, connecting these 3 continents. And we're going to show that again later on. So a brief history of Jerusalem. We are talking about that 7,000 years ago, we start to see the first remain of human civilization in Jerusalem, a settlement by a Canaanite tribe that were called the Jebusites. 3,000 years ago, King David conquers the city and he makes it the capital of Israel. 1,000 years ago, so his son Solomon built the first temple. And this temple was destroyed by the Babylonians. And the Babylonians took the Jews to exile in Babylon. But 70 years later, the Persians conquered Babylon and allowed the Jews to come back. These are the stories of Ezra and Nehemiah. And when they come back, they rebuild the temple, but in a very modest way. In a very modest way, not a luxurious way like King Solomon temple used to be. So this temple existed during the time that the Persians conquered. Later on, this is the Greeks, I'm talking about Alexander the Great that conquered Jerusalem. Later on, we're talking about the Maccabees. The Maccabees are the ones that rebelled against the Greeks. And then we have the Romans. And the Romans arrived here in the year 67 BC, 63 BC, when Pompeius conquered Israel. The Romans had Roman local governors, but there's one special story about King Herod that we're going to talk more about later on. But King Herod wanted to build the temple again. He wanted to make it the most magnificent building in the world. And he did a magnificent work and rebuilt the temple, double the size, in the year 19 BC. King Herod died when Jesus was born. And we're going to talk about it again. Because King Herod wanted to kill Jesus. And then Jesus and his family fled to Egypt for 3 years until King Herod died. So the temple still existed, and we're going to talk about Jesus visiting this temple. But in the year 70, it was destroyed again by the Romans. And the Romans destroyed Jerusalem and made it a Roman city, pagan city, called Ilia Capitolina. Until the 4th century, in the year 324, the Roman Empire converts to Christianity. This is the Emperor Constantine that converted to Christianity, and he left Rome. So this is why we call it the Byzantine period. This Byzance later on becomes Constantinople after his name, Constantine. And today we call it, of course, Istanbul. So Constantine left Rome, moved to where today is Istanbul, and from there he ruled the Roman Empire. We call it the Byzantine period because it's important that suddenly, instead of temples for all the pagan gods, they started to build churches. And the first churches were built, not the first, but the important first churches were built during the Byzantine period. This lasted until the 7th century when the Muslims conquered Israel, destroyed most of the churches, and then ruled until the Crusades came to Israel in the year 1099. The Crusades rebuilt most of the churches, and Israel becomes again a center of pilgrims. 1 second, please. So they ruled here. They had a fight with the Muslims, especially against Saladin. It's a complicated story, but I will jump forward to the year 1260 when the Mamelukes conquered Israel. And again, most of these churches were destroyed. The Mamelukes ruled until 1517 when the Ottomans, the Turks, conquered Israel, and they ruled here for 400 years until the First World War. In the First World War, Britain conquered Israel, and Israel becomes a British mandate until 1948, when Israel was finally became, you remember there was the independence war, but finally after 2,000 years we had independence again, and Jerusalem became the capital of the state of Israel. Another important year that is important to mention is 1967. This is the 6 Days War, where in this war Israel fought against Egypt, Jordan, and Syria. And during this war, they managed to conquer the West Bank, including the east part of Jerusalem. And since then, Jerusalem is what we call the unified city. So that was quick. Let me stop for a second to see if there's any questions. Nahum, can you tell me if we have any questions in the chat?
Actually, in the chat, there is only one question at the moment from Dr. Irina Kumar. She likes to.
I wanted to say two things. One, technical, the audio is not perfect. I say to Ishai. And the second remark is that the 6 Day War was after we were attacked by the Egyptians.
Yes. It's if you remember correctly, we attacked first, but it started with when they closed the Suez Canal and they didn't allow the boats to come.
Yes,
it was more about the war of the water with Syria. But yes, it's an amazing story how in 6 days Israel conquered land that was 6 times bigger than it used to be before.
Okay.
We will get back to that later. So let's, yes, another question?
Actually, there's a question about the photograph of the Western Wall, of the Wailing Wall. Dr. Irina Kumar from Berlin asked, the section for the female worshippers seems smaller to me, and in the photo you showed, it looked like more male than female worshippers were present. What is the reason, therefore, that there are more male than female worshippers?
So I can tell you that before the state of Israel and before 1948, so one thing I want to mention again, during the time between 1948 and 1967, the Western Wall and the Old City were part of Jordan. So Jews were not allowed to come in. Only after 67, then Jews were allowed to come back to the wall, okay? Now, when they did that, they made this separation because Jews don't pray together, Orthodox Jews, I would say. Men and women don't pray together. They say that the women attract the main attention. And instead of focusing on reading the Bible and praying, they are looking at the women. So it's better to separate them. But it's, of course, I can say that men, they are the ones that make the decision in the world. So they made a bigger section for the men. Also, the synagogue is in the section of the men. I will show it to you in a second. But the female part, of course, is smaller. Then this is why it's also more crowded, because it's smaller. And what can I tell you? It's a patriarchal religion. It's not very feminist. And let me show you something. If you were asking me about the wall, one second. I want to show you something. Can you see anything yet?
Well, it's coming now, yeah.
Can you see now? Okay, so this is how the synagogue of the Western Wall looks from inside.
No, we cannot see.
Okay, so there's these
Ishai.
cabins where they have the Bible, and there's one second.
Okay, now it's okay. Now it's okay.
Okay, so this is how the synagogue looks from inside the Western Wall. It's a covered area, and you have these cabins where you have the Bible, the big books, and there's a library where you can borrow books to pray. You see, there's a whole library over here. It's underground. Above it, there are Muslim houses. Okay. And actually, if you go again, there's a wall here. And if you pass this wall, you will get here. Can you see it now? Nachum, can you see this?
Yes,
we see, yeah.
yes.
So these are what we call the rabbinical tunnels or the Western Wall tunnels. These tunnels go underground, and especially people stop here to see this huge rock. Can you see how big it is? It's a rock that is 13 meters long and 2 meters high and 2 meters thick. They say it weighs 700 tons. How did King Herod manage to move these huge stones? It's a mystery. But when they found this tunnel, and you can walk through this tunnel, and you get to the level where you find the quarry where they dug the stones from the top of the mountain to the bottom. So this is how we rolled it down, one on top of the other. Another very interesting thing that you can see, maybe, 1 second, I can show you again. In the wall, you see the notes? I will go closer. Everybody is putting their wishes in the wall because we feel that here God listens to our prayers better than anywhere else in the world. So everybody that comes to the wall, they put a wish in the stones. Okay, I want to talk about the location of Jerusalem because this is very important. So Jerusalem is not on the main international roads. There were two international roads. One is called Via Maris, the way of the sea, that led from Egypt along the shores of Israel. You see here Gaza, Ashdod, Jaffa, Dor, Akko, Sidon, Beirut, and it goes north to Turkey and then Europe. Another road is the road that goes from the Red Sea to Elat or Aqaba, and then to Rabat Ammon, Amman, and then to Iraq, or even north to Damascus. So Jerusalem is not on these roads, but it's on two main local roads. One that goes from Gaza to Beersheba, Hebron, Jerusalem, Shechem, Megiddo, Hatzor, and then it goes to Damascus. And another road that goes from Jaffa to Jerusalem, to Jericho, to Amman, and then to Iraq. So it's on a main crossroad, a local crossroad. I want to show you, let me see if it will open for me, in Google Earth, how it looks. So this is Jerusalem of today. It's a city of 1 million people, capital of Israel. In the middle, when I zoom in, you will see the walls of the old city. Can you see it yet? It's coming, coming, coming. And you see the Temple Mount in the middle, right?
Yes.
But when I zoom out, you will see again how Jerusalem is in the center of Israel, right between Tel Aviv, Jaffa, the Red Sea, Jericho, Amman. And when I zoom out a little bit more, you will see how Israel is really the bridge between the three continents. Egypt is Africa, Israel is part of Asia, and Turkey, you can see, is already part of Europe, and then Greece, Italy, and so forth. So all the international trade always came through Israel, either by land or by sea with boats, but all the international market came through Israel because boats could not cross the ocean. So Israel was a very important point that whoever rules Israel is actually having the key for the international market. They can decide who will pass and who shall not pass. And they can put tax on every boat and every wagon that passes through Israel. So whoever rules Israel is a very strategic point. And this is why, as we've seen before, all through history, different nations wanted to conquer Israel. Okay? Let's move on. So Jerusalem was built on a narrow hill surrounded with mountains and close to the Gihon spring. I don't know if you can see here on the right-hand side. Outside of the city is the Gihon spring. Sorry, that's the only source of water that the city has. And the city was built close to it. Now you can see it's called City of David. It's outside of the old walls of today. Then King Solomon built the temple on top of the mountain, and the city expanded itself to the north and then to the west. Okay? And again, later on it was destroyed, and built with the size of the old city of today by the Turks. If I look over here at this map, you can see the city of David in pink and the walls of the old city in purple. You see the light pink is how big Jerusalem was at the time of King Herod. And this is how it looks today. So the city of David is this area between the road where you see the cars, and you see people are still living in it, although a lot of it is archaeological site. And then King Herod built the temple where today you see the Dome of the Rock, and this is what we're going to talk about now. So when we talk about the holiness of Jerusalem, it starts with Mount of Olives. Mount of Olives, it's believed that the dust that God made Adam from came from the Mount of Olives. It's believed that the Spirit of God stayed here because after Adam and Eve had made the first sin, God himself left the world, but Hashchina, the Spirit of God, remained here in the world in the Mount of Olives. We also believe that the branch of olive that the dove returned to Noah in his ark came from Mount of Olives. But these are traditions. What's most important is that this is the oldest cemetery in the world where people are still being buried. And it's an active cemetery that's been there for at least 3,000 years. Why so many people want to be buried here? Because it's believed that the Messiah would come from Mount of Olives. And all the people that are buried here will be the first one to resurrect. So let's go to the Mount of Olives and see what can we see from there. So we are traveling in time and space. 1 second. Loading. Can you see that? The view from Mount of Olives, can you see it?
We see it.
Okay.
Yes, we can see it.
So now what you see is the graves, the synagogue, the cemetery, the Jewish cemetery. And if we look closer, you will see most of these tombs has stones on it. It's a sign of remembrance. When you once a year, when you go to visit the tomb, you put another stone, and that's to remember, because we say the stones have been here millions of years before us, and they will stay millions of years after us. Now I want to zoom in to where the city of David used to be, outside of the walls. If you can see some trees over here, this is where the spring is. And then, as I said, King Solomon built the temple where today you see the Dome of the Rock. And right to the left of it is Al-Aqsa Mosque. And right to the left of it is the Jewish Quarter. King David Hotel, maybe you can see the YMCA Tower. So this is the Jewish Quarter, the Muslim Quarter. The Christian Quarter is, I don't know if you can see it well, there's the German church. It's called the Redeemer, right over here in the middle of the old city, and next to it is the Church of Holy Sepulchre. We will visit it later on. But what you can see also from here, this is the road that Jesus went down from Mount of Olives. On the way, he stopped over here. This is a place called Dominus Levi, the tear of the Lord, where he cried for Jerusalem, knowing that it's going to be destroyed. When you go further down, you see a Russian church. It's called Mary Magdalene with the golden domes. And when you cross the Cedron Valley, you will get to the Golden Gate that you see now is blocked. So Jesus went down this valley, went up through that gate into the Temple Mount. So everything you can see from Mount of Olives. What's in the chat? Yes. Okay. So, Mount of Olives, this is where the holiness of Jerusalem starts. But most important is what God commanded Abraham to do. And God commanded Abraham, you can read it from the book of Genesis, take your son, your only son, Isaac, whom you love, and go to the land of Moriah and offer him there as a burnt offering on one of the mountains that I will show you. And Abraham bounds Isaac and is about to kill him with a knife. But then the angel stops him and says, do not lay your hand on the boy or do anything to him, for now I know that you fear God, since you have not withheld your son, your only son, from me. So this was a test to see that Abraham is a true believer. And when they did that, God made a bond with Abraham, a pact, saying, to you and your descendants, I will give this land. So where did this happen? Mount Moriah, according to the Jewish tradition, is right above Jerusalem. This is where Solomon built the temple. This is where today is the Dome of the Rock. Now we know that Abraham visited Jerusalem, and he visited Melchizedek, the king of Shalem. Shalem was the old city, the old name of Jerusalem. And the stone where he bound Isaac is this stone that you see now on the left. And let me take you in, because today it's inside the Dome of the Rock. And only Muslim people are allowed to visit here. So this is the rock on which we believe that God bounded Isaac. If you want, I need to tell you that according to the Muslim tradition, the same story happened with Isaac's brother, Ishmael. He is Abraham's first son from Hagar, not from Sarah. So the Muslims believe in this story, and they believe that it happened in this place that is called also the foundation, but they say it happened with Ismail. They also say that from this stone, Muhammad went to heaven. Now, this is the most beautiful building in Israel, I think. It's made out of marble, and then you have ceramic tiles, and with gold leaves, different kind of designs, stained glass windows, and the roof from wood is filled with writing from the Quran, and again gold leaves, and this is the dome from inside. You can see the phrases from the Quran all around it. It's a very, very beautiful building. We're going to talk about it. And as I said, this is actually the holiest place for the Jews. Why? Because we believe that over here above this rock, we had the Ark of Covenant that Moses brought from Mount Sinai with the 10 commandments inside. They were over here on this stone. And the only person that was allowed to go in here would be the high priest. And that would be only once a year in Yom Kippur, in the Day of Repentance. Okay, so this is the stone, the foundation stone, the center of the world. As we said, David wanted to build the temple, but God said he had too much blood. You have shed much blood and have fought many wars. You are not to build a house for my name, because you have shed much blood on the earth in my sight. But you will have your son, who will be the man of peace and rest, and I will give him the rest of all his enemies on every side. His name will be Solomon, and I will grant Israel peace and quiet during his reign. He is the one who will build a house for my name. So Solomon, he is the one that builds the temple, but David gives him a lot of gold, silver, bronze, iron, wood, stone. This was a beautiful, beautiful building that only Jews were allowed to go in. And then there's a section where only men are allowed to go in. This is where they would make the sacrifices. And last, this is a place where to the stone itself is only the high priest could go in. This is what we call the Holy of Holies. Okay, so this is the ark. Of course, a replica. We don't know where the real ark is today. And inside there were the 10 Commandments and the place for the sacrifices, where the priests, the Cohens, and the Levites will serve many people that would come to pray and put sacrifices. So first temple of King Solomon. And as we said, this temple was destroyed by the Babylonians in the year 586. Okay, by the Babylonians. They steal all the treasure. They take the Ark of Covenant. This is why we are still looking for it, because they stole it and we don't know what happened to it. But when the Jews went to Babylon, they did not forget their faith. And this is something that is very important to remember. Because if they would have forgot their faith, we will not be able to speak about nor Judaism, nor Christianity, and nor Islam. Because most of the nations of the world, of the old world, are gone. What happened to them? They lost their faith. They became followers of the faith of the conqueror. And the Jews were the first people that, even though their temple was destroyed and they were taken to exile, they kept their faith, they kept the Bible, because they had the priests and the Levites with them. So in Psalms 137, we read, "By the rivers of Babylon where we sat down, there we wept when we remembered Zion. How can we sing the Lord song in a foreign land? If I forget you, O Jerusalem, let my right hand wither. Let my tongue cling to the roof of my mouth. If I don't remember you, if I don't set Jerusalem above my highest joy." By the way, this is something that the groom at the wedding, in the happiest moment of the wedding, he breaks the glass and he says this phrase, "If I forget you, O Jerusalem." This is a commandment for all the Jews, never to forget their faith, the Bible, and about Jerusalem. So the Israelis go to Babylon for 70 years, but then Cyrus II from Persia, when he conquers Babylon, he allows the Jews to get back. And what you see from the British Museum is Cyrus cylinder that is saying that the Jews can go back and rebuild their temple. That's Ezra and Nehemiah, but only some people came back. The rich people actually remained in Babylon for many, many years. So after the Persians, we have the Greek, we have Alexander the Great, 332 to 167. Then we have the Maccabees, the Hasmonite dynasty. And this is the picture I put here of Passover, because not Passover, sorry, Hanukkah. Because Hanukkah, if you know, is what we celebrate to remember the victory of the Maccabees against the Greeks. So the Romans ruled Israel, and they allowed King Herod, who was born a Jew, but to convert a Jew to an Edomite family. And the Jews didn't accept him, but he wanted to do something for everybody to remember him, and he wanted to rebuild the temple. Now, the first temple of Solomon was a small temple. What you see here on the left in the middle, let me maybe annotate it. So what you see here in the middle, this was the size of the temple of Solomon. But it was a small temple on the top of the mountain. King Herod wanted to build a huge temple. It would be double the size. So what he does, he builds 4 walls around the mountain peak, and he covers it with rocks, and on which he will build the temple. Okay, around the temple was a marketplace where later on Jesus would fight with the money vendors, money changers, and the vendors. And to its right, there was a fortress called the Antonia Fortress. Okay? Here it is. But what happened? What happened was that the Jews rebelled. Well, first, let's see something very special. Let's see if it plays. So I want you to see how this temple looked like. I'm not sure if it plays. It's not coming. 1 second. I want you to tell me if you can hear this. Can you see anything?
Yes.
Without the sound, huh? Okay, I will skip this because I think let me try one more time. This is a very beautiful video that shows how the temple looked like. You see the gates open. This is where only Jews were allowed to go in. And then you go up and you see the temple itself in all its glory. With the golden doors, with grapes around it. And this is the royal wing. It took 1.5 years to build it, but it actually was a never-ending project. That all the time they continued building and building. And you can imagine that in the holidays, the 3 holidays, Passover, Sukkot, which is Tabernacles, and Pentecost, which is Shavuot, millions of people would come to Jerusalem to see this amazing building and to make their sacrifices. Okay, let me close this. A house of prayer for all nations. That's what they say, and I will get back to it in a second when we will talk about Jesus. Let me see if there's questions. Okay, this is a very interesting video. You can later on see it again. So you see the stairs that leads to the temple. There were many entrances to the temple. Okay, and this is a model from the Israel Museum in Jerusalem of the Second Temple. So you see the Golden Gate goes to a big yard around the temple. Then you go through one door where only Jews were allowed to go in, another door where only men are allowed to go in, and in the middle is the Holy of Holies where only the high priest was allowed to go in. Okay, now we're getting to a very interesting part, which is the importance of Jerusalem for Christianity. So I can tell you that Jesus, like most of the Jews, would visit Jerusalem at least once a year, maybe 3 times a year with his family. But the first time was when he was still in his mother's womb. By Jerusalem, now it's part of Jerusalem, there was a village called En Karen. And that's where Elizabeth and Zachariah lived, the parents of John the Baptist, who was Jesus' cousin. And Mary came from Nazareth to visit her cousin Elizabeth. And for the first time, she felt Jesus in her womb. So this is what we call the visitation church. So Jesus came to Jerusalem, as I said, when he was 40 days old. Like every Jewish boy, first boy would go to the temple. And then at the 8th day, they make circumcision, and the 40 days they present him in the temple. And every year they would come. And these steps is what we call the teaching steps. Because later on, when he was about 12, they came with him, the parents, and they went back to Nazareth and forgot to take him with him. And when they came back, they found him sitting over here, listening and teaching also the rabbis that were all amazed how smart he was as a young boy, how well he knows everything and about the Bible and about God. So these are the original entrances. We call it Sharei Hulda, Hulda's gate, to the temple. Now, so Jesus visited here. Most of his life, he lived in Nazareth. He was born in Bethlehem. Bethlehem is very close to Jerusalem. And, but the last week of his life, he spent in Jerusalem. And I want to talk about this now. So when he came to Jerusalem, first he visited a place called Bethania. Today it's called El Lazaria. This is the place where Lazarus died. And 3 days after he was dead, Jesus brought him back from the dead, which is a sign of the Messiah. Then there he sent his disciples to find him a donkey, because it was the prophecy in the book of Zechariah that the Messiah will come riding on a donkey, on a white donkey, or whatever. So in the book of Mark, they say how Jesus comes down on a donkey, and everybody say, Hosanna, Hoshiana. Blessed is he who comes in the name of the Lord. Blessed is coming the kingdom of our father David. Hosanna in the highest heaven. Maybe you know this verse from Mark. What is also important to mention here is, according to the prophecy, the Messiah has to become from the descendants of King David. And Jesus is one of the descendants of King David. 28 generations after King David, Jesus is born in Bethlehem, in the same place where King David was born, to fulfill the prophecy that the Messiah will come from the descendants of King David. So now we want to talk about Palm Sunday. So when Jesus comes down, everybody put palms in front of him. Then he goes to Mount Zion. Well, first he goes to the temple, right? He goes to the temple and he sees all the vendors in the temple, and he's very annoyed. And he starts to chase them out and throw down their goods. And he says, my house will be called house of prayer for all nations, but you have made it into a den of robbers. I will tell you later on, this is one of the main reasons that he was crucified, because he was interrupting with the common business that was going on in the temple. It was not only the normal day, but it was also a way of income for many people who were afraid that Jesus might do things that will harm this trade. Now, very, very important, the Last Supper. So the Last Supper is the Passover dinner that we are going to celebrate tonight. It's a celebration that you do with all your family. And during this dinner, we read a very important book. It's called Haggadah. And this talks about the Exodus from Egypt. And it talks about how Moses called Pharaoh to let my people go. And Pharaoh hardened his heart, but God made the 10 plagues. And finally, when they went out to Mount Sinai, first they crossed the Red Sea, and the Egyptians that followed them drowned. Then they went to Mount Sinai, they got the 10 commandments. Then they went in the desert for 40 years, many died. And the young generation that were born free, they are the ones that will come back to Israel and rebuild the temple and build the temple. So during this dinner, we eat a special kind of bread we call matzah. Matzah is a bread that doesn't have yeast, that doesn't rise. Because the Jews, when they left Egypt, they didn't have time to bake the bread. Now we drink 4 cups of wine. And this is where Jesus teaches his disciples, eat this bread, this is my flesh, and drink this wine, this is my blood. So here he also said, one of you is going to betray me. Then he goes to Gethsemane to pray. But his disciples fall asleep. And he said, man of little faith, even 1 hour you couldn't stay awake with me. And then he says, see, the hour at the hand, and the Son of Man is betrayed into the hands of the sinners. Get up, let us be going. See that my betrayer is in the hand. This is Judas Iscariot that gives him the kiss and surrenders him to the Jews who take him to the house of the high priest, to Caiaphas, then to Pontius Pilate, then to Herod Antipas, then back to Pontius Pilate, and then to crucifixion. Now, this is a little bit complicated. I don't want to get too much into it, but what most of Protestants believe is that the Golgotha, the Calvary Hill, is outside of the walls of the old city, where the Catholic and most Orthodox believe it's in the Church of Holy Sepulchre, which is today inside the old city. But if you look at this map, you see Golgotha with a question mark. Maybe it's here. It used to be outside of the walls, because Jews never bury inside the walls. So this is why some people say it cannot be the Church of Holy Sepulchre, but it should be outside of the wall. So it's a dispute. I don't want to get into it, but just for you to know, Catholic and Protestant don't agree where the real place of crucifixion took place and where the real tomb is. So the Catholic, they follow what was started by the Franciscan brothers from the Crusade period. And this is what today is known as the Via Dolorosa, the way of the misery. So station number 1 is the Antonia Fortress that doesn't exist anymore. Station number 2 is where they beat him. It's called the Flagellation Church. They beat him, they put him the crown of thorns, and from here he starts to walk with a cross, very heavy cross. Here you see the crown of thorns with blood, and Pontius Pilate is washing his hands. Then he falls down for the first time. Then Simon from Cyrene helps him carrying the cross, and so forth. The last stations are inside the church, and that's the place of the crucifixion, where they nailed him to the cross, where the cross stood. And after he died, they put him on a stone and they take him to the grave. Okay, that's inside the Church of Holy Sepulchre. So now I want to go inside. Let's see. So this is how it looks from the outside. You see 2 floors. First, this church was built by the mother of the Emperor Constantine, if you remember. Her name was Helena. The Catholic call her Saint Helen. And she built this church on top of what she believed is the place of crucifixion and burial of Jesus. Now you see 2 floors, because this was built later on by the Crusade. After the first church was destroyed, the Crusade built these 2 floors. And this is the original entrance. Now, if you go inside, I want to show you, no, not this one, this one. So you can pick this one. What you see now is it's the Greek Orthodox Church. Very, very beautiful. But I want to show you another one where you see the tomb. Never mind. The tomb is not, well, you don't see the tomb itself, you see the stone that is above the tomb. Okay? And when you go in, you see an altar where they say that the angel told the Mary Magdalene that Jesus is not there, he's risen. And then she goes and tells the disciples what happened. She went inside and she didn't find the body. They don't believe her, but Peter goes and he sees that there's only the linen, the holy shroud, and the body is gone. And the angel tells him, go to the Galilee, you will see him there. So again, I don't know who is with us today, but the Protestant, I don't want to say they believe, but they think it's possible that Jesus was not crucified and buried in the Holy Sepulchre, but in another place that they call the Garden Tomb. And this is the stone that resembles a skull. You see the eyes and the nose in the middle. And this is where the British General Gordon thought that this might be the place that Jesus was crucified, the Golgotha. And later on, they found there a tomb. Okay? A tomb that nobody was buried there, only one person. There was a place for two people, but only one person was ever buried there. I can show you from inside. So you see there's actually two tombs here. I don't know if you see it yet. So there's two tombs, but one is finished and one is still being carved. So this is where Protestants believe this is the tomb of Jesus. But actually they say, you know what? It's not matter anymore. Because look what it says on the door. If you can read. He is not here. He is risen. One second. Okay. So another very interesting thing over here, they found the rolling stones. I don't know if you can see it outside. There's a rolling stone. They think maybe this is what was blocking the entrance to the tomb. You see there's a place here for a rolling stone to block the tomb. 40 days after the resurrection, you remember 3 days after he was crucified, he resurrected from the dead. And 40 days later, he ascended to heaven. From where? From Mount of Olives. And the Catholics show this stone as the place where he went up to heaven from. For the Russians, it's this place. And for the Lutheran, it's this place. So everybody agrees it's Mount of Olives, but there's a fight again. Where is the Bible many times? We know that Noah sailed with his hard rain, and the Israelites went to Sinai 40 days, twice. You remember he went down, he saw the golden calf, and then he went up again for another 40 days of fasting. He led the Jewish people in the desert for 40 years. Then we have the story of Goliath. For 40 days, he was teasing the people. In the book of Judges, 3 times it's mentioned that the land was in peace for 40 years. And then Jesus was brought to the temple at 40 days, and he was tested by the devil in the wilderness for 40 days. This is what we call Karantal by Jericho. Now we come for another very interesting story. That is 50 days after the resurrection. It's Pentecost, Shavuot. Very interesting. These are all Jewish holidays. So the disciples gather again in this place, which happens to be also the room of the Last Supper. And it says that the Spirit of God came down upon them, and they start to speak in tongues, in different languages. But they all could understand each other. So it's from here that they got the courage to bring the word of Jesus all around the world, knowing that people will understand them. So this place is very interesting. It's right above, you see the staircase, the tomb of King David. This is what we call the upper room, the place of the Last Supper and the miracle of Pentecost. So the columns here that you see in the middle, these are from the Byzantine church, but the arches are from the Crusade church. Later on, the Muslims came and made it into a mosque. You see some writing in the ceramic and the glass windows in Arabic, and the Machab, a place for prayer towards Mecca. So it's very interesting, again, a holy place for Jews, Christians, and Muslims. Sometimes they fight about it, sometimes they manage to live in peace. This is a very interesting thing inside. It's the pelican, and it's a symbol of Eucharist. You remember, this is the Last Supper where Jesus teaches the Eucharist, eat this bread and drink this wine. So the pelican was a symbol of the Eucharist. Anyways, the Jews rebelled against the Romans, and the Romans sent army and destroyed the temple, burn it, and rob it. What you see here on the left is the Ark of Triumph of Titus in Rome, where they took the menorah, you see in the middle. The menorah is the candle holder of 7 branches that the Jews, the slaves, brought. I mean, the Romans, they conquered, they robbed it, and they made a parade with all the slaves and the treasure that they stole in Rome. And this Ark of Triumph, which is right by the Colosseum, reminds us of this. This is where we see the burning of the temple. And the only place that we knew that survived is the Western Wall. Now, as I showed you, we found in the archaeological excavations more parts of the Western Wall and the Southern Wall. And this is a nice quote that we have a song. It says, "There are men with heart of stones, but there are stones with a human heart." And they talk about the wall. So the Roman and Byzantine period is where first Jews were not allowed to come into Jerusalem. It was destroyed and made into a pagan city. And then in the year 324, it became a Christian city where churches were built. Until the Persian invasion and then the Muslim invasion, that most of these churches were destroyed. Now let's speak a little bit about Jerusalem in the Muslim tradition, because Jerusalem is the 3rd most holy place for the Muslims around the world. The first one is Mecca, the second one is Medina, both in Saudi Arabia, and the 3rd one is Jerusalem. Why? So first of all, we talked about the stone. They believe that Abraham bounded Ismael, Isaac's brother, on top of the stone, and not Isaac. But most important is the nocturnal journey, the night journey that is mentioned in the Quran, that Muhammad left Mecca, you see Masjid al-Haram, to Masjid al-Aqsa. Al-Aqsa, it means the extreme mosque, the most furthest mosque. And it's believed that it was in Jerusalem. And here, from this stone, he went up to heaven. Going up to heaven, he sees all the angels and all the prophets, including Abraham, Isaac, Jacob, Joseph, Moses, David, Solomon, and Jesus. But he comes back with the Quran to his followers, with the message from God. So you see, the place that was holy for the Jews is now holy for the Muslims. And the story of ascension of Jesus from Mount of Olives is very similar to the story of ascension of Muhammad from this stone. So the Dome of the Rock, this most beautiful building, let me show you. I think this is the most beautiful building in Israel. Again, this is from the outside now. You can see marble, ceramic, beautiful inscriptions, the stained glass window, and the golden dome that was once gold plated, but then after it was burned, it was donated money by King Hussein, the former king of Jordan. With a lot of money, they redone the dome with real gold. And that's the stone from inside. So you see it from outside and inside. Nowadays, tourists can go outside, but only Muslims are allowed inside. So this was built, well, let me tell you something very important. The temple was on top of Mount of the temple, okay, Mount Moriah, according to Jewish tradition. It was destroyed by Romans. It was not built by Romans because they wanted to mock the Jews, saying you don't have a temple anymore. Christians didn't build there because it was the prophecy that the temple will be rebuilt only when Jesus comes back. So when the Muslims come, they clean the Temple Mount. That was the Caliph Omar in 636. And then his followers built the Dome of the Rock and the Al-Aqsa Mosque. Okay? Where today they pray in both of them. Mostly men would pray in the mosque, and the women would pray in the Dome of the Rock. This is Al-Aqsa Mosque. After this Muslim invasion came the Crusades, okay, by the call of the Pope. I will jump forward a little bit. The Mamelukes, the Ottomans, we have Suleiman the Great, who built the walls of the city in 1537. And then we had the First World War, and Britain conquered Jerusalem. This is a very interesting verse from the philosophy of Muslims, who says Jerusalem is so holy that a sin in Jerusalem was 10,000 sins, but the mercy in Jerusalem was 1,000 mercies. And whoever lives in it is like a jihad fighter, and whoever dies of it is like that, he will get to heaven. So many people wanted to come to Israel. During the British Mandate, so the British promised Israel they're going to build a country. This is the Balfour Declaration in 1917. But the situation got complicated. The Jews were not majority. And the British also promised the Muslims this land. So we start to have some fightings in Israel between Jews and Muslims. And it came up that they decided the partition plan, that part of the land will become Jewish and part of the land will become Muslim, and Jerusalem will be an international city. But what happened when the British left in 1948? The Jews declared their independence. The War of Independence was in the middle of it. And at the end of the war, these were the borders. So the Jews got a little bit more than that was promised, especially the Negev, the old southern part, and half of Jerusalem. Jerusalem was split in the middle with a border between Israel and Jordan. Part of Jerusalem was Israel and part of Jerusalem was Jordan. This is a population, Jewish population in Israel. So you see in 1800, there were less than 10,000. Then at the end of the 19th century, the first movement of Jews, of the Zionist movement, that called the Jews to come back to Zion, to come back to Israel. So we started to have more and more Jews coming into Israel. During the time that the Hitler got into power, many fled to Israel. 1936 is a lot of Germans that came to visit Israel, to live in Israel. In 1947, there were only 630,000 Jews from a total of 1.8 million. But after the war, 2 years later, there were about 1.1 million Jews and about 700,000 Muslims. Because when Israel was declared, Jews from all around the world started to come and live in it. Okay? And population grew because all the time we have immigrants from around the world because, if you are a Jew, you can come to live in Israel and you get citizenship immediately. So whenever there were problems around the world, for example, in Russia, so many people from Russia came to Israel. Nowadays, we have about 2 million people from Russia that came, in the years of 1990, that live in Israel. Today, Israel has about 7 million Jews out of a population of 9 million. No, more than that. 7.5 million out of a population of 9 million. Okay, we're coming to the end, and we are talking about the end of times and the coming of the Messiah. The signs that the Messiah will come starts with the end of exile, the return to Israel. This is why I wanted to show you the previous slide, that you see how people from all around the world started to come back to Israel. This is one of the signs of the coming of the Messiah. Another one is that we're going to have an independent state, supposed to be by a religious king. We're talking a time of miracles. We're talking about a time of distress, war, famine, pandemic. This is exactly what's happening to us now. But after these terrible times, the land will give fruits, and peace and unconditional faith will be around the world. This is something that started from the Old Testament. But then it says also, there shall come forth a rod from the stem of Jesse. Jesse is Ishai, my name, and Jesse is the father of King David. And the branch shall grow out of his roots. And this is talking about the Messiah coming from the descendants of King David. And during his time, the wolf also shall dwell with the lamb, and the leopard shall lie down with the kid, and the calf and the young lion and folding together, and a little child shall lead them. This is the end of times, the good times of peace. We're also talking about the waking of the dead when the Messiah comes. Okay, so both the story of Daniel and the story of Ezekiel, that he says, many people are going to open the graves and bring them up from them. I will bring you back to the land of Israel. Then you, my people, will know that I am the Lord. When I open your graves and bring you up from them, I will put my spirit in you and you will live. And I will settle you in your own land. Then you will know that I, the Lord, have spoken, and I have done it, declared the Lord. So this will happen in Mount of Olives. In Mount of Olives, as we said, there are graves that some say 3,000 years old at least. This is called the tomb of Absalom, the tomb of the prophet Zechariah. And I also put here the tomb of Menachem Begin, one of our prime ministers that was religious and didn't want to be buried where all the leaders of Israel are buried, but in Mount of Olives. So we're coming to the end, and I want to mention the Messiah in the Muslim tradition. So they call it the Mahdi, and he will fight against Dajjal. Dajjal is like Antichrist. And who will kill Dajjal? Jesus. So the Muslims, they believe that Jesus will participate in the war against Antichrist, against Dajjal. And they say that this Mahdi, this Messiah, is alive, but he's hiding. But any moment he can come out. So in the past, we have many stories of different people that declared the Messiah. One of them was from Sudan. Another was from Persia, that we have the Baha'i shrine Jaffa, in Haifa, if you know about it, and one of them was from India. But all around the world where you have Muslims, sometimes in the world, there come somebody that declares he's the Messiah. So Judgment Day, when the Messiah comes, there will be a breach, and only the people that have not sinned could go through this breach, and the sinners will fall down to hell. And the Messiah will come down from the Golden Gate that today is blocked. The Muslims didn't want all the Christians and all the Jews to come from here, so they made a cemetery in front of it, and they blocked the gate. But we know that when the Messiah will come, the gates will open. So Jerusalem today is a very interesting city. As I said, 1 million people, very colorful, people from all around the world, from different religions, from different traditions. And we say it's called the city of peace because every nation wants a piece of it. It's a joke, but it's true because all the eyes of the world are in Jerusalem. More news are coming from Jerusalem than any other city in the world. And what my wish is that after this lecture, you also understand the importance of Jerusalem, how holy it is. But most important, I want to make sure that we see that the differences are not the things that we have to focus. There's a lot of similarity between religions. And hopefully, like its name, Yerushalayim, Ir Shalem, Ir Shalom, the city of peace, will bring its faith to all the world. And so I want to finish again with Isaiah, that he says, come, let us go up to the mountain of the Lord, to the temple of the God of Jacob. We are saying in Israel a blessing that is, I would say it in Hebrew, then in English, Leshana Haba'a B'Yerushalayim. Next year in Jerusalem. When we say that, we mean that any moment the Messiah can come. And of course, what I want to wish you is that you will come to Israel, visit us, and enjoy this beauty of the city. And we will be here to welcome you.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
Now I want to open it for questions. Please. Yeah, who will want to ask the first question?
We have a question here from a friend, Conrad Meifert from Berlin.
Yes.
Von Meifert, Sie können sprechen, wenn Sie mögen. Müssen das Mikrofon an.
It was very interesting to listen to you and to hear the justification you gave from religious grounds. I've been visiting Jerusalem and Israel a couple of times, and as a tourist, I can say there's no more interesting place in the world than Jerusalem and Israel, to visit these two on a small country like that. And my question is, if you take the justification for the existence of a Jewish state after 2,000 or 3,000 years, what will the Palestinians do who had to leave Israel, the state of Israel, and if they want to come back to their homeland? They have the same justification, but certainly it will not be possible to do it. So do you have any plans for the future of the refugees who left their homeland, the state of Palestine, and are now in all the other Arab countries? If they come up with the same justification, we want to go back to our homeland.
So you're asking me as personally or as a president or the prime minister of Israel?
Well, both answers would be interesting.
I don't have a good answer to that. It's something that is in dispute. Like every Jew has a right to come back to Israel. The Palestinians want the same. I don't have an answer to that. This is something that smarter people than me are dealing with. And so far, I didn't hear they have a solution. This is why still we don't have, one of the reasons that we still don't find peace agreement with the Palestinian is the right to return to Israel for every Palestinian in the world. Nowadays in the world, there's about 10 million that live outside. So I don't know what happens if 10 million Palestinians will come to live in Israel now.
Okay.
So I don't have a good answer to that. I'm sorry. Any more questions?
Yes, I have one. As you're a tour guide, when do you think that tourists will come back to Jerusalem? When will we be allowed to travel to Israel once again?
So as you know, most of the country is already vaccinated. So I think Israel will open its borders for people who have been vaccinated. They will be able to come to Israel. When, I don't know. But I think maybe in 4 months or 6 months, I think they will be able to come to visit Israel.
Great to know. Yeah. Edgar, your turn.
I would like to. Hello.
Just this question. Von Piper, bitte.
Yes. Can I ask? I would like to answer in a way that we are doing tonight with the Pesach or Passover evening that I'm going to lead with my family. You see, I can show you a little bit about how it looks. And the last sentence or the last word of the Haggadah looks like that. Whoop. And it's written, Leshana haba'a Yerushalayim. This is the end of the Haggadah that we are going to hear in Jerusalem. I hope that next year you all will come to Jerusalem and we shall meet you. Thank you very much for participating. Thank you.
So thank you very much, Annie. This was a great tour. Thank you very much. Tomorrow is Palm Sunday, and thank you, Joshua Levi and Nachum Frankel, for this great tour and all together who made this possible in this morning. As you know, the District 1940 is many times on virtual tours, tours outside to other countries, to other clubs. And so we are proud to have in our district our Rotary International President Holger Knack, who wishes us all the best, and he gives us the greetings this morning. And we are very happy that we have so close connections between our district and your district, Nachum, and to Israel. So thank you very much for this very interesting tour this morning. And well, we just felt that we have been just with you, and whoever would like to join the tour can just give have the chat with the 3 marks on the right bottom of your screen, and then you say the chat, and then you have all the connections that you can have on your in your computer, and have another journey to all these places. So thank you very, very much in this at this time, and we hope to see you very soon. And as at the time we can travel, of course, we will come to you, and we will enjoy it very much. Thank you very much.
Please. This is
Great pleasure. Thank you. Thank you all for joining this virtual tour. I hope you enjoyed it. Thanks to our guide, Ishai, for executing an excellent job. As you know, the tour is free of charge, but who wants to show his gratitude to Ishai, our guide, is invited to do it. You can find all the details in the chat box. And I want to wish you all a good day and happy Passover and happy Passover. And hope to see you soon. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you. Stay healthy.
Thank you. Yes,
Well.
stay healthy, please.
Thank you very much.
Bye-bye. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Thank you
Thank
very
you.
much. Chag Samach.
תודה וחג שמח.
חג שמח.
חג שמח.
happy holidays.
Happy holidays.
Thank you.
Happy
healthy.
holiday. Thank you very much. Happy Easter.
Happy Easter.
Happy Easter.
Happy Easter. Thank you.
Ja, schönen Oster.
Vielen Dank.
Gleichfalls. Bye bye.
Danke, Sascha.
Sasha, thanks you for assisting me.
I'm glad to do
נחום,
it.
זה היה מבהיר. היה מצוין.
יופי, אני שמח.
Nachum, we just opened the secret that we, Nachum, we both we met in Hamburg and we met in San Diego, and so
right.
we are both DGs together, and we enjoy it very much to have this connection. Yes.
Edgar, you know that I was the chairman of GSE to your district.
Yes. Yeah, I know. Yeah.
Okay.
Come soon again, please.
Yes, I'll do it. Thank you. I'll hope to see you here in Jerusalem, in Israel. You'll be our guest.
Of course.
Thank you very much. Bye.